how would you tell people that results? You personally, how would you decide?
Well, interesting question. I don't know. I'd have to do some research on this.
All right, hey there, everybody. Welcome to Kent with Bent 97, FranKentsein. Oh yeah,
Nice. 97
Guys,
is a lot.
it is a lot, man. And actually, I was just looking through a whole bunch of them, and like this show has changed a fair bit more than I really realized. Like I looked at like the original Kent with Bent, and it's rough. Yeah, we've come a fair ways. I'm reasonably happy with how the show is now, but my goodness, it took us a little while to get our feet. In fact, I'm kind of surprised that it ever actually became much of a thing, given how rough it was at first. But hey, you know
There
what?
were a couple key shout outs to the channel that brought a couple of waves of subscribers in, and then
Yep. And by the way,
steady
guys,
growth, consistent scheduling on Dapper's releases, and steady growth. It's been great.
yeah. By the way, do hit like if you enjoy this. It does help the channel out a whole lot. I'm seeing that there are people who haven't hit like yet, so you know.
There's time.
But anyway, guys, we don't have a whole bunch of preamble today. We're gonna try and hop right into it, especially since we only got 17 minutes left of this video that doesn't have any actual video, and then we can get to one that does have video. So, and I'm guessing that at least 5 minutes of this is just gonna be preaching. So
It
hopefully,
might be more too.
you never know. But so guys, in case you're new or you just need a reminder, Kent with Bent is a show where we take a look at Kent Hovind videos and we have a drinking game with it, because quite frankly, Kent Hovind is so low tier that you can easily debunk him while absolutely trashed. It's not even really very difficult. So we have drinking rules for the drinking game. Very nice there. The Slayer. Like it. So our drinking rules. First of all, if Kent Hovind says something that's so stupid we just kind of have to take a drink, we take a drink. That's, you know, to cool our brains off and whatnot, because it gets dumb. But if Kent Hovind says something that is actually factually correct, and he's not just quoting someone, then we take a drink for that. We'll also take a drink anytime Kent Hovind tells a joke that doesn't land, or tells a story that didn't happen, like if he confuses his shower thoughts for a real story. We'll also take a drink anytime that he mentions the National Socialist German Workers' Party or their various activities or leaders, especially during the 1930s and 40s.
Which he does regularly, and I think I actually know why. I do know why.
Oh, I definitely know why. It's almost never appropriate, but he does it all the time. We'll also take a drink anytime one of us gets a prediction. So whenever it's not clear what Kent Hovind's going to go for, if one of us can predict it, we'll take a drink for that. Further, there are some ways that you guys can help out. One is, we'll go over a couple random ones. One, sometimes you'll hear Godzilla or Mothra. If that happens, we'll take a drink. But also, if you're a channel member, and you send a super chat or channel milestone chat with one of the emojis, or Mothra, King Ghidorah, or Godzilla, we'll take a drink for that, because I'm a bit of a, Godzilla fan. Also, if you super chat, whether you remember or not, anything to the effect of AIG is a bag of dicks, we'll take a drink because they liked, or at least liked, to falsely copyright claim videos en masse. So we take a drink for that. Also, if someone buys gift memberships, we take a drink for each gift membership. So if you buy 5 gift memberships, that's 5 drinks. With that, I think I'm done. Have I forgotten any drink triggers?
All right, so I'll just say this. I have written down a 10th rule, and there's his phone number. Was that something about, like, if he shows someone's full phone number, we would take a drink?
I don't remember that actually being an official rule.
I don't remember, but it's, for some reason I wrote it down here, so...
Well, first of all, we have... Oh. Do a couple things. But we have a... member milestone chat to read. Oh, and there's Godzilla. So first things first, take a drink for Godzilla. Second thing, DM Wing, who's been a member for 5 months at the Amniote level, thank you very much, DM Wing, sends a super chat with 3 Godzilla, well, kaiju emojis. We got Godzilla, Mothra, and King Ghidorah, so we take a drink. Membership benefits, yeah, he asks. So let's talk about membership benefits. Joining the channel is really easy. There's a little button down below here. You can join. If you join, you get access to a super secret Discord server that I tell everyone about all the time, where basically it's only for people who are on the Patreon or the channel membership program. You also get early access to my videos. One is going up either tonight or tomorrow morning. I just finished rendering it like right before we went on this. It's almost an hour long. There's about 4 months or so of early access that's just available for you. Hours and hours of Dapper Dino content. Also, there are, if at higher levels, you can get your names in the credits, and on Patreon, at least, you can ultimately get to the point where you can start demanding videos from me. Dark Law Dragon, for $10, with a Godzilla, Mothra, and King Ghidorah emoji, says, AIG is a bag of empty, broken spanners. Very nice. We'll take a drink for that. Alright guys, I think it's time to get into Kent with Bent, well, CSE 102 Class 1, which doesn't have any video, unfortunately, but the next one does. Oh, and Skeletor, over 9,000, member for 1 month at the annual level, thank you again, says, forgot I had one of these, with a Mothra emoji followed by a drink emoji. So we'll take a drink. Alright, 4 drinks before we even get it to Kent. That's pretty standard for us. Sometimes it goes even higher.
Counter says 3. Never mind, it says 4.
Goodness. So Zach Brannigan. Zach Brannigan for €5 says, I'm actually here to watch live for once. Well, I'm glad that you're here, and I am glad that I said Zach Brannigan and not Zap Brannigan, because that's an easy one. Alright, here we go. Kent was just talking about someone finding a giant beaver skull, which is not unusual because Castoroides skulls are actually a pretty common fossil, so I don't know why it's a big deal. Dr. Tapioca Weasel, tell you what, DM me either on Discord or Twitter or Patreon for your video request, because you absolutely can request that. So we'll keep going.
They dug around, did not find anything. They didn't find the rest of the beaver. All they found was the lower jaw. They dug around for a while. Some university professors came out there and dug for a while, couldn't find the rest of it. But there's other indications around the world that beavers were absolutely huge.
I mean, yeah, Castoroides was a very, very large genus of beaver-like animals. They're not technically beavers in the sense of, like, they're not as closely related to modern extant beavers as those beavers are to each other. But, like, yeah, Castoroides was big. Good point.
This beaver would have been about 8 feet long.
No, probably not. Probably more like 6, but whatever. It's not that big of a deal. It's within an order of magnitude, so we'll give it to him.
And, you know, if the world before the flood was vastly different with much larger trees, you would need much larger beavers to chew them down.
What?
So he's saying that trees before the flood were like thousands of feet tall?
I don't know.
How did they get water all the way up to the top?
I'm taking a drink, and then we're going to talk about how beavers work, which is not something I expected to have to talk about.
Or trees. Or...
So,
thinking.
Beavers can chew through trees that are significantly bigger than like, they are. And Gupdu3 for $2 says, leave it to Castoroides. Nice. So, yeah, a beaver can cut through a tree of pretty large size without needing to itself be particularly big. And the thing is, if you have big trees, they have to grow from smaller trees. So it's not like you can't still find the smaller trees that the big trees eventually would have grown into had they not been felled by a beaver. Royland Hutchins for $2 says, I got a rescue dog for Christmas. Godzilla and Mothra, so we'll take a quick drink. And congratulations, that's really awesome. I'm a big fan of adopting pets rather than buying them, because there are plenty of pets at shelters who need a good home, and there are far too many breeders who are unethical. So if I had to choose to support breeders versus shelters, shelter is the way I would choose to go. Especially for cats and dogs. Like, you know, if you're getting like a lizard or something, there aren't that many lizards at shelters. So yeah, breeders. But like, yeah, for cats and dogs, shelters are definitely the way to go. Steve Areno, who's been a member for 1 month at the Amniote level, sends a Mothra emoji, so we'll take a drink for that. And says, why, Bent, why? It is not December. Take that sweater off, like, right now. You know what? It's after.
Good question. Next question.
Everything was kept balanced back in those days also, just like God takes care of everything.
Okay, sure.
Increasing air pressure also increases the amount of oxygen that diffuses into the water.
That is actually true. We'll take a drink for that. As you increase overall air pressure, you increase the partial pressure of oxygen, which also increases the rate at which it, goes into solution in the. So yes, it does increase water oxygenation on the whole, all things being equal.
Our little fish pond out here, we have a fountain that's bubbling to try to add oxygen to the water.
Yeah, that's how you do fish tanks.
Because fish have to breathe underwater. They suck the water through their gills, and the gills absorb the oxygen and get it into their bloodstream. Well, eventually, pond water can become stagnant, and the fish will all die because they've used up all the oxygen in there. But if you increase air pressure, more oxygen goes into the water.
Okay.
Which means, if the world had greater air pressure, it would not only increase the size of the insects and increase the size of the trees.
No.
Predicted that. I predicted you would say that. I'm drinking for that.
Okay.
Yeah.
Look, there's no reason to think that trees would grow bigger with more oxygen. Oxygen is a waste product of trees, right? They excrete more oxygen than they need. Now, trees do use aerobic respiration, right? Like, they do need oxygen, but they don't need it from right. They don't use it from the atmosphere. They make their own oxygen, use that oxygen, and then they have excess oxygen that they have to get rid of, because if they don't, it'll actually damage their cells, because oxygen is highly reactive, in case you didn't know. So it's just...
That's great for us. But
oh, yeah. Although, to be fair, I mean, algae in the ocean are by far the dominant contributors to atmospheric oxygen.
Also great for us. We're grateful for both.
Yes. Although, honestly, if I had to choose one to keep and one to get rid of, I would keep the algae and get rid of the tree.
I think it does contribute more, but I haven't. The last time I checked, the numbers were closer than I had remembered them being.
I mean, I don't want to get rid of trees, though. I do like trees. These are great.
I'm not going to get rid of it either.
Yeah, no.
Even if I could, why would I?
No. There's no good reason to. Yay trees, yay algae. There you go.
Moving on.
It would increase the size of the fish.
Look, the limiting size for fish isn't oxygen, right? Look at the whale shark. The thing is gigantic. There's a reason they call it the whale shark. It's not running out of oxygen. Fish are the size they are because that's a good size for their particular niche to get, like, the food they need to get and whatnot. There are gigantic fish. There have been even bigger fish, like lead-sichthys, when at a time when oxygen levels weren't really significantly bigger. There's just taking another drink, because no, fish aren't size limited based on oxygen in most environments. And, like, the other thing is, like, the only situation where he's talking about this being a realistic constraint on fish is in, like, a stagnant pond. Well, you know what? You can only get so big in a stagnant pond before you take up the whole pond. Then what, Kent? Pond fish are small, not because they don't have enough oxygen, but because ponds are small. You can't get that big in a pond, or you take up the whole pond. And that's not going to work, because who are you going to reproduce with if you're the only fish that fits?
And the number of fish that can survive.
And Space Dragon says, to be fair, the oxygen content in the water does limit the maximum size of fish. Yes, in theory it does. But in practice right now, fish are not oxygen constrained in terms of size limit, right? Like, that's just not what the thing that's keeping fish the size that they are. Yeah, arthropods, Dr. Tapioca Weasel points out. Yes, with arthropods, that is, in fact, fair. Arthropods can get much bigger with higher oxygen concentrations, or just higher partial pressures of oxygen. That is true. But currently, you could argue that arthropods are probably size limited by oxygen. Can't do the same thing with current fish. Fish could be bigger than they are today without running out of oxygen. Now, could they get to be infinitely big? No. There's going to be a point at which they can't oxygenate their tissues, but they're nowhere close to that right now.
Per cubic mile of ocean water. Because now there's more oxygen available, which means everything changes, okay? Lots more things grow in the water.
That's possibly true.
And lots
What
more
does he
fish
mean
eat
by
those.
that?
I think he
Lots
means
more
like
things like compared to before, or
like you can
compared
get
to the
lots
land?
you can get lots more like zooplankton and small fish and whatnot if the oxygen levels are up.
Oh, okay.
Because yeah, I mean that's probably true.
Things, and so there's less competition for food, so you get a larger population that can survive in a given area. Today, farmers out in
So maybe a larger population that can survive in a given area is a maybe. The thing is, most populations, at least today, aren't oxygen limited, right? Like, to be oxygen limited, what that would mean is that every gasp that you take is like a desperate gasp that might actually be taking up the oxygen that someone else needed, and now they suffocate because
like
you
in
took that oxygen,
Spaceballs.
right?
It's Spaceballs.
Most ecosystems are food limited. There isn't enough food for all the organisms, so some of them starve.
Like Star Wars.
Right. Wait, what?
Well, in Star Wars, they were food limited and not air limited. But then Spaceballs, which was a spoof of Star Wars, they were air limited.
I don't remember
So-
people starving in Star Wars, but whatever.
No, they weren't starving, but they were limited by food. not
Okay,
by
fair
air.
enough. Yeah.
I mean, they were going to run out of food before air, is what I'm getting at. That's
Yeah.
No, I don't think too many people were starving in Star Wars. But look,
So
if you're going to talk about what Spaceballs is, you may as well also mention what it was based off of. That's all.
and the problem is that what's at the base of the food chain, right? Well, it's the autotrophs. But the autotrophs are net oxygen excretors, not net oxygen absorbers. Which means that no matter how high you set the oxygen level, you don't get more autotrophs in most ecosystems. Which means you don't ultimately get more biomass at the bottom of the food chain, which means the higher levels of the food chain don't get to have higher biomass either. So, no, just increasing the oxygen levels is not enough on its own to increase the total population in a given ecosystem. That's not how it works. In order to increase the population in a given ecosystem, you have to increase the current limiting factor. If that's phosphorus for the plants, then great, add some phosphorus, you'll get more plants, you'll get more population. That's one of the things that happens in algal blooms today with runoff from industrial scale farming. But like, just upping the oxygen isn't just going to magically increase the population, because the population wasn't oxygen limited in the first place. This isn't Mars.
South Dakota, for instance, you have to have about 10 acres to raise one cow.
Okay, but is that because the cows are gasping for air, or because they need that much to eat? I'm taking a drink. I just can't with this. My goodness. Kent, what's the limiting factor on the growth of grass? Is it oxygen? No, of course not. In most places, like I said, it's probably phosphorus or nitrogen.
Whereas you
Those are
get down
very
here in
important.
Florida,
Those are very important elements.
Yes, they are.
Plant growth and tree growth.
Oh, yeah.
you only have to have, say, 1 acre to raise 2 cows. Half acre supplies enough grass for a cow. I don't know what the ratio is, but that's the idea.
Yeah, because grass totally grows faster in high oxygen environments. That makes lots of sense.
You have just more food available. What if you had a pre-flood world that had greater air pressure?
Then there would be more air pressure, which would allow things like arthropods to get bigger. And it would probably mean that, like, the biggest fish would be a bit bigger, but most fish probably wouldn't.
Greater carbon dioxide.
Well, you didn't say that earlier, Kent. But yeah, greater partial pressure of carbon dioxide would encourage plant growth. But here's the other thing. Most ecosystems, the plants are also not limited by carbon dioxide, right? They're limited by other things. So the thing is, like, you hear about people who have greenhouses, right? And they pump in extra CO2. That's true. That does help the plant growth. But they also add things like extra fixed nitrogen and phosphorus to the soil that those plants are growing in first. Because plants aren't normally limited by carbon dioxide. They're normally limited by other nutrients in the ground that they need. So you're going to have to come up with a whole bunch of other stuff, like how'd you get extra phosphorus and how'd you get so much more nitrogen fixation in the ground soil? How did those things happen? And a canopy, because that's what he's talking about, isn't going to help you with either of those things. Increasing the air pressure doesn't increase, like, the phosphorus content of the soil. I mean, unless Kent has some new chemistry to tell us about. It's like at some point someone told him, hey, CO2 is plant food. And then he's just, oh, I guess if all you had to do to make plants grow faster is just add more CO2. Not in most environments. Because most environments, plants aren't limited by CO2, limited by other factors. And that's the thing that I hate about all of this, is Kent doesn't realize that, like most things in life, the population and growth rates of organisms are multifactorial. There's more than one thing that affects it. And if you bump up one of the things that affects it, but it's not the limiting thing, it doesn't matter. It won't change things.
That's too complicated for Ken to understand. Every effect has one exact cause.
I mean, he acts that way, yeah.
Nothing else.
All right.
You get much more plants growing, many more plants growing per acre.
Oh.
Now the animal population can skyrocket, and it's not a problem. There's no competition for food.
That was funny.
There's still going to be I'm taking a drink. Hold on.
No.
There's still going to be competition for food because animals always reproduce at rates that are too high for the food to be sustainable, with the exception of like weird humans who just choose not to reproduce because we're smart for our own evolutionary goods sometimes. I mean, you're too smart for your evolutionary goods sometimes. Anyway, yeah. Well, not using
or the chat.
But humans as a species.
Yeah, you guys in the chat, you are.
Well, but also the rest of humanity. Anyway.
All 8 billion.
Yes. So yeah, look. When you have a bumper year for plant growth, right? You have a whole bunch of deer, but they still keep reproducing. And at first, sure, there's a very low die-off rate. There's plenty of food. But they keep reproducing until the food is once again limiting. And then suddenly there's competition again. Like, unless plants just grow inside of animals' mouths who eat them, just as they're hungry, which I don't think Kent is proposing, then the ecosystems will grow to become food limited again.
Which means there wouldn't have to be any carnivorous animals. As long as there's plenty of food, the animals don't fight.
But there won't be.
Take a look at their teeth in the fossils, Kent.
Well, yeah, there's that too. Like, where are the fossils of these hypothetical peaceful ecosystems with no predators? Because we certainly don't have any evidence of them.
Right.
If there's plenty of food around,
that's all the evidence you need. The King James Bible.
Oh, good point.
To be upset about it, It's only when things get tight, that they start to argue and bicker and fight over things. A shark's jaw, like this one, you can tell roughly the size of the
I'm presuming he's holding up a shark's jaw.
I think he's showing some other people, yeah.
Shark by how big the
Probably
teeth
with
are.
a cool tie on at the same time he's showing them. He's wearing a good tie.
Probably.
And it's different for different species of sharks, and there's probably 80 or 100 different species of sharks.
80 or 100 species of sharks. Let's find out. Let's just Google that.
I know there's
How
baby
many
sharks. That's
species of shark are there? 1,000.
Yeah, 80, 1,000. How many orders of magnitude is that?
It's more than one, so he's wrong.
So he's wrong.
Well, okay, if he says 80 or 100, then I guess 1,000 is just exactly one. But I'm going with his 80, so that way I can just declare him wrong. So, yeah. There's about 1,000 species of shark, Kent. 1,000. Not 80. How do you...
Man.
Why?
Just say random things. Why bother checking to see if what you're about to say is true?
You know what, Kent? Why not just say there's 12 species of shark? Why not? Who cares?
I think there's 69 species of shark.
There you go.
Or maybe there's 420. I don't know.
Varieties of sharks, but generally the rule is a 1-inch tooth means the shark was 12 to 15 feet long.
I have no idea if that's true, and I don't care to check.
When I was in Hawaii, we went over to the Big Island to see the volcano. You were with us, Marlissa, weren't you, on that one? And
oh yeah, this was back when Kent's kids were still talking to him, because Marlissa is his daughter's name. Ah, the good old days before they all kicked you out of the house that you used to own, and that they made you pay rent in when you got out of prison, and then just cut you out of their lives and out of their kids' lives. Because you're an abusive piece of shit, Kent.
That is true. He is that.
Yep.
We bought this shark's jaw, and the guy said it came from about a 15-foot shark. Now, sharks have all cartilage. They don't have any bones in their body.
That's true. We'll take a drink. That's true.
I don't think I learned that from Kent, but I do remember learning that. Probably in college. Actually, it was in college. It was in an evolutionary class.
I have no idea when I learned that.
On a chart. And it turns out the sharks furthest related because they don't even have a skeleton of bones. Like, what? Okay.
except for the teeth, when it's not really bone, but that's the hard part. So the rest of the, shark's teeth are about the only thing you ever find preserved. The rest of them rots because it's just cartilage. They don't have a bony structure.
I don't know. Isn't it a pretty hard cartilage, or is it just super soft cartilage? I don't think it is.
I mean, it's pretty tough, but he is actually right that shark fossils are almost always just teeth. Finding shark body fossils apart from teeth, it happens, but it's very rare.
If you got that right, I'll drink to
we'll
that.
Take a drink. Yeah. I might have to take a break early to get a new drink. I'm already almost out. Well, I'm already halfway. My ice has melted.
Oh.
Oh, yeah, he's Command Cyborg, you're right. He's going to argue in favor of Megalodon being only because of oxygen levels, even though Megalodon lived recently enough ago that the oxygen levels were not any different than they are today. Which is another reason why I'm saying that current sharks,
details.
current fish are not oxygen limited in size.
This one was dried out. I've got it in the office down there, the shark's jaw. But about 12 to 15 feet for 1 inch of tooth. Now, fossil shark's teeth are found, indicating sharks got to be 80 feet long before the flood.
Okay, first, I don't know that 80 is not accurate. Let's go Megalodon length. 50 to 60. 65 feet, roughly, is basically the maximum.
That's an order of magnitude.
Well, I mean, he said 80, so it's not an order of magnitude, but it's still like, come on, Kent.
Within an order of magnitude.
Yeah, you're right. So, like, we can't call him on it too much because, like I said, we like to give creationists a free order of magnitude because usually they need far more than that. So we can just give them a free order of magnitude, and who cares?
Right.
Yeah. But yeah, just stop making things up, Ken. Just stop it. Anyway, yeah, Megalodon, great.
Can you imagine an 80-foot shark?
Yes, of course I can. I can imagine a 100-foot shark or a 1,000-foot shark.
I can imagine a 1,000-foot shark.
I can imagine a shark as big as the planet Earth. Who cares?
I can. Yeah.
I just put it next to a picture of Earth in my mind, and there it is.
Yep.
I could imagine a shark the size of the galaxy. Who cares?
It's hard for me to picture how big that really is.
Yeah,
but
I could still put it next to a picture of a galaxy in my mind, and like that's a shark the size of a galaxy.
Good point. Can you do it with
you can walk right in.
Ego?
I mean,
is a shark as big as Kent's ego?
A shark as big as no.
That's impossible.
That is impossible.
Into the jaw easily, standing up. One fellow said, "Do you believe Jonah was swallowed by a whale?" Oh yeah. Well, actually, the Bible says great fish, but could have been a whale. I don't know. I'm not sure if whales in God's classification
Bible's a science
system.
Book, it matters. If the Bible's a science book, it matters.
It does.
If you have to take it literally, it matters.
It appears that whales are classified as fish. Anything lives in the water is a fish.
So I will say, it is the case that when you look at biblical Hebrew, the groupings that animals fall into are generally like things that live in water, things that fly, things that are small and creep around on the ground or under the ground, and like cattle and associated organisms. So like, yes, when your categories are that broad, whales probably do fall into the same category as tuna. Now, could Jonah have actually been swallowed by a fish? Well, if by fish we actually mean, like a shark or actinopterygian or, well, those are pretty much the only options. The answer is technically yes. There probably have been fish that have existed that would have been big enough to swallow a human whole. You certainly wouldn't be able to survive in there for 3 days without a miracle. Now, could he have been swallowed by a whale? Probably not. Even the big whales actually tend to have fairly small throats because what they tend to be swallowing is plankton. Right? They have big mouths, but they don't actually need a big throat for that. So, like, a blue whale probably couldn't actually fit a human down its esophagus. Now, I suppose it could hold it in its mouth. Maybe. But yeah, there's probably not a realistic possibility of a human and ever encountering a fish big enough to swallow it whole. And whales probably can't do it either.
Just because we decided to classify whales and dolphins as mammals, and
You know, because they meet all the definitions of a mammal. Yeah.
Decided to.
Drink for Godzilla.
We just decided to screw with the creationists.
Yeah. It has nothing to do
Who
with
cares
the fact
about the
that, like,
criteria?
yeah, I mean, sure, they have milk and hair, and you know, they have a dentary squamosal jaw joint instead of a articular quadrate jaw joint, and sure, they have thoracic and lumbar vertebrae as obvious separate categories, and only the 7 cervical vertebrae, but like whatever, we don't have to call them mammals. That's okay. I mean, that's literally everything that makes a mammal, but who cares? Dark Law Dragon for $2 sends Godzilla, Mothra, and King Ghidorah with a drink emoji, and we will drink. Thank you very much, Dark Law Dragon.
By our classification system they are. That doesn't mean the Bible system is wrong. They just had a different system of a way of classifying things.
I actually do agree with Kent here. We're not going to drink for it being right because it's just an opinion. I don't think it's wrong for a language to not classify things according to taxonomy, right? Taxonomy is a science. Your colloquial speech patterns do not have to correspond to a technical science. I don't think it's incorrect for a language to have a category of just aquatic animals that is normally translated as fish, but doesn't technically mean that in the taxonomics. That's perfectly fine. I don't think it's a criticism that should be leveled against the Bible that doesn't use taxonomy. I don't think it's a valid criticism. There you go.
But Jonah was swallowed by something that was awful big. The Bible says God prepared this creature to swallow Jonah. God had prepared a great fish, so may have been something special about it. I don't know. But
it's actually an interesting take that I'm not familiar with, where like God creates like a special animal in the water to swallow Jonah, like for the purposes of like getting Jonah to Nineveh to give his prophecies, which then the Ninevites actually accept in the story, which is unusual. Don't accept the words of the prophets in the Bible, whatever. Like I kind of like that, right? Like there isn't actually a fish that could do this that really exists, but God creates a special fish or he modifies a special fish or something. It at least acknowledges that the fact that no, there isn't a fish that could actually do this that we know of.
Maybe it was a metaphor.
I mean, it could be that too.
Maybe the story's a metaphor.
Maybe it was Monstro from
Anything's possible.
I want to see the Guillermo del Toro stop motion Pinocchio. I have no interest in the quote unquote live action Disney one. That sounds like a nightmare.
This one's big enough to swallow a Volkswagen. Certainly big enough to swallow a man. If you get J. Vernon McGee's book, commentary on Jonah. You're J. Vernon McGee, the guy on the radio,
I don't know. This is before my time, apparently.
Yeah. J. Vernon McGee, God bless you, my beloved. He's been long dead now, but if you get his book on Jonah.
John Leland for $5 says, Sharknado! Man, I really appreciate the first Sharknado movie, but then they became a little bit too self-aware, and they went a little downhill.
Commentary. He goes through several instances where people or animals have been swallowed and lived. Swallowed by a whale and lived. Was that story on the radio this morning about that? Yeah. Some guy named Bartlett washed overboard on a ship and was swallowed and found 2 days later alive, bleached out. His skin never did recover. The rest of his life he looked pretty weird, is the way I understand it. It happened in 1890-something or something.
Was he swallowed by a whale, or was he held in a whale's mouth? Because one of those is way more likely. Goop23 says, I saw the live-action Disney Pinocchio, and it sucked. Yeah, I'm not surprised. Look, as a rule, I have zero interest in the Disney live-action remakes of their amazing animated films, because that's one of the things. They're picking some of their best animated films to make live-action remakes of. And I just don't care. There's a reason those movies were animated, right? Like, Pinocchio doesn't work well in live action.
Also, it's a lot to live up to.
Yeah, that
maybe
too.
Take a bust, animated movie that didn't do so well in live action,
right?
And do a good job of it.
Yeah. Also, calling them all live action is a bit of a stretch, since the Lion King live action remake had literally no actual images that were from life. It was all animated in a computer. It's just that it was mosly photorealistic. That's not what live action is, guys. Sorry, Disney. You made a second animated The Lion King. The second
I've
one
heard
just happened to suck.
I've heard some opinions on photorealism. To go there.
Look, photorealism it's a thing that you can aspire to, right? And there's nothing wrong with it. But pretending that it's actually photography isn't okay. That's lying. When Disney calls their photorealistic live, quote unquote, live action Lion King live action, that's a lie. It's not. It's animated. Anyway, that's just me ranting. Tesla Ranger says, sperm whales often swallow prey like squid whole, so humans can make it through their throat. Okay, yeah, maybe a sperm whale could swallow a human whole. Although, I feel like just getting them into their mouth would probably... Like, can a human fit entirely in a sperm whale's mouth? Because that mouth is really tiny. Like, wouldn't they get chopped up a bit? I don't know. Yeah, and the NB says, I know of no such movie. Who would remake The Lion King but worse? Yeah, that's a good point. There probably was no remake of The Lion King.
Right.
Whaling ship. But
Oh, and Starrunner just Googled the story that Kent just told about the guy who was swallowed by a whale. Turns out it's just a legend. There's no actual evidence that it ever happened.
You're shocked.
I'm just going to take a drink for Kent just going with like, oh, some guy once said this thing happened. Yeah.
He basically said, I don't believe in providence. Let me prove it.
he tells that story on there. So sharks were bigger. Turtles, evidence is found that turtles were huge.
Yep, Archelon. Very, 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 very big sea turtle from the Cretaceous.
Interesting.
Cool. I don't think current sea turtles are oxygen limited in their size, but I don't actually know, so.
Before the flood. This one is in Peabody Museum, which is in Yale University in Connecticut, showing a turtle about 12 feet, maybe 13 or 14 feet. I don't know how long the tail was.
Not very. Turtles, as a rule, have pretty short tails, and Archelon was no exception. And I'm just assuming that that's the turtle he's showing us, because it's the biggest known turtle to have ever existed.
That would be a large turtle.
Yes.
Birds, fossils. Now, birds don't fossilize easily because their bones are hollow.
Well, they don't fossilize intact very easily, but that isn't a huge barrier to just fossilization per se, but like, whatever, Kent.
Because bird bones are hollow, which gives them really more strength and less weight. If you notice bridges, the structure of bridges is often full of holes. It relieves some of the weight and adds more surface area. It goes into another physical problem of if you take a piece of solid pipe and bend it, if you drilled a hole all the way through the middle of the pipe, a hollow pipe would be harder to bend.
Kent, get to your point about birds. I don't care about pipes.
Because it has more surface area. Less mass, but more surface area, and actually is harder to bend. So oftentimes,
cool.
Hollow is stronger. Any engineer that builds bridges will tell you, yeah, that's right, hollow can be stronger. And bird bones are hollow, which means they're less likely to fossilize. They're more likely to just crumble, get smashed or something like that. But in spite of that obvious difficulty, bird fossils have been found.
Yeah, lots of them.
Indicating they got about 13 feet tall.
Okay, drink before we get into this. Okay.
Holy.
The birds that were 13 feet tall are basically just moas from New Zealand. You want to know the fun thing about moa remains in New Zealand? They're not primarily fossils. Because most of them went extinct, like, less than 1,000 years ago. Right?
Okay, that's pretty recent.
Yeah, they're not fossils in the first place. And this is within historical times. So, Kent, if you want to say that a 13-foot-tall moa needed an ice canopy, then you're going to have to say that there was an ice canopy around the same time that the Normans were conquering England. So, Kent...
Which is before or after Jesus was alive?
About 1,000 years after Jesus was alive.
Wow.
So, Kent, if this is supposed to be the canopy is what helps birds get to be 13 feet tall, and the canopy collapsed during the flood, then you're going to have to explain why these animals persisted into a historical period.
The canopy came back, but just for those animals and just until 1,000
just
years
over
ago.
New Zealand. New Zealand got its own canopy. I'm taking another drink. I just can't with this.
What an amazing set of coincidences have to happen for the flood to be possible, including physics has to just not be a thing.
Yup. And we have to have canopies that only exist over a few islands.
And there's no gravity in space, except for that there is IRL, because that's not how that works at all.
Thank goodness. Okay, we're going to hit play again.
Now, there were some birds that were on the islands of New Zealand.
What did I just say?
And maybe Australia.
Let's keep it with New Zealand, where we're very sure.
Even 800 years ago.
Hey, what did I say? About 1,000 years ago. To count that.
That the Maori people over there, the Maori Indians, were killing them and eating them.
Yep.
And these birds were 8 or 10 feet tall.
I mean, and bigger, but sure.
Giant birds were alive on Earth just, 800 or 900 years ago. And they were killing them on these islands. Apparently, they've all gone extinct now.
Like who says apparently, like, we're just going to run into a 12-foot moa sometime.
It's been discovered in the last 1,000 years or so that they're all extinct now.
Command Cyborg says, New Zealand dome theory. Yes, that's going to be the new creationist theory. New Zealand dome theory.
Did Kent put apparently in his thesis? I can't remember.
Up at some point, he probably did. I mean,
that's the kind of thing he would do. Don't do that. Don't put the word apparently in your thesis.
Yeah, the NB says he called the Maori, the Maori Indians. No, it's not right. It's weird and inappropriate. But like,
oh my gosh! I'm so glad I put no relation on this account when I first made it.
I don't think Kent knows the word native as it applies to humans.
There's a lot of words Kent doesn't know, to be fair.
No.
Because reading is not his strong suit.
Though there are some people arguing that they're not extinct on some of the Pacific Islands. Well, who knows? They find some eggs of these things that are enormous.
Can't tell you what.
Just the egg.
You find us a moa, and then I'll believe that maybe they're not extinct. Until then, it's just like people saying they saw Bigfoot.
I mean, look, if they're that large, it should be easy to spot them.
Yeah, that's one of the things.
Maybe they just hang out above the ocean, like hundreds of miles out. Then maybe they're hard to spot.
So the thing is, like, okay, when was the last time a large-bodied animal was actually discovered? It was basically the okapi, right? It was discovered in the Congo. Since then, there really hasn't been anything much larger than, like, a rat. It's like a brand new species that we're finding on land.
They should check Atlantis when they dig it up in the ocean.
I think the characters from the new Wakanda Forever movie might have something.
Anyway. No spoilers.
I actually haven't even seen it. I'm looking forward to seeing it. Anyway, so yeah, the chances of us finding an extant moa is pretty darn small. They're not exactly subtle animals.
Huge eggs have been found over the last 100 years.
Mm-hmm.
Somebody thinks, they're still alive. I don't know. That gets into the cryptozoology study of giant birds. You can read it for yourself and see what you think. Reptiles, lizards, never stop growing.
Technically true. Not true for reptiles as a group, but true for lizards generally.
Reptiles grow all their life. Now, people stop growing. What happens, the ends of your bones in your body have a certain type of cell that keeps multiplying and reproducing, and when you reach a certain size, that stops.
That's oversimplified, but that's actually surprisingly accurate. There are growth plates on your long bones that actually do, like, cap off when you finish growing. So I'm going to take a drink for Kent actually getting way more about how human growth works right than I would ever have expected.
A generous, he got something right, but I'll go along with it.
Well, look, I'm thirsty. And actually, while this rum is really cheap, it actually works pretty well in this cola. So,
oh, nice.
Yeah. Because I bought some of the cheapest rum out there, right? And then I try a little tiny bit, and I'm like, this just tastes like medicinal artificial vanilla and strawberry. But then it actually works surprisingly well in this cola. Like, I don't know, like the weird flavors from the rum kind of get canceled out by the various like botanicals in the cola, and it just works okay. So, hey, good for me.
If you break your arm or your leg at the joint when you're a child, If you break across those special cells that continue to grow, there's a possibility your arm or leg will be actually shorter than it should be. Because
that sounds
That's
plausible.
True. That's true.
All right,
That's
we'll
true.
give it to him.
Yeah, I can't remember the exact mechanism, but some of those signals in there can be ended a year or two early or stop for a year or two while your leg heals if you're right in that. I guess I don't know the exact age range, but like 15 is like the maximum or whatever usually, and then yeah, you can have a leg that's an inch or two shorter than the other if you break it at the wrong time. Don't break your legs, young children.
Yeah, no.
Be safe. Stay in school.
Lorraine Drosophila asks, how do you not hurt the next day with cheap rum? That's my secret. I'm always in.
because you broke it during childhood while it's in the growth stage. You can break your arm in other places and it won't affect the length of it, but if you break it across those special cells that are continually growing, you may end up with a short arm or something for the rest of your life. Okay, who cares?
So
Anyway,
Kent broke something in his
reptiles
brain a long time ago. That's why I stopped correct.
never stop growing. They grow all their life. When we went to Orlando, I was with Eric, I know. Marlissa, were you with on that trip? We went to Alligator Farm. Okay. We stopped at the alligator farm where they raise alligators for they eat them and, make stuff out of their skin and stuff like that.
Okay, so I guess I'll describe what alligator farms are like. So the way alligator farms work in the US is, first, they're primarily for leather exports to Europe, because Europe is the world's largest consumer of alligator leather. They do actually still sell the meat, but it's a minor component of their income. It's primarily a leather operation. Now, alligators aren't normally bred in captivity. They breed in the wild. But what happens is that by law, alligator farms are required to return a certain percentage of their alligators, adult alligators, alive back into the wild. And it's actually a higher percentage than the percentage of alligator eggs that actually survive to adulthood. So what happens is people go out and they basically steal eggs from alligator nests. They sell them to farms, and then the farm returns a higher portion of those eggs as now adults to the wild than would have likely survived had the eggs actually been left with the mother alligator. And then they get to keep the rest and use them for leather and also secondarily for meat or other products, like you can sell the gator skulls and what. So that actually ends up being a pretty big boon in terms of conservation for the American alligator, Alligator mississippiensis, which is actually a big part of the fact that alligators are no longer endangered. It's really a big part of that is down to alligator farmers in the United States. So, good job, alligator farmers. So that's what alligator farming is, for those of you who don't know, because especially if you're not in the United States, there's no good reason for you. And even if you are, it's a pretty obscure topic. Anyway.
I talked to the manager. He took me and showed me all the stuff around there and got me into the backsides and saw, not part of the normal tour. I made friends with him, and I said, "Sir, can you tell me, how big do these things get? How fast do they grow?" He said, "Well, we raise them here under what we consider as close to ideal conditions as we can."
By the way, Too Young to Feel This Old says, "This channel and these streams are criminally underviewed." Well, thank you. Thank you for helping me through my deconversion. Also, for the tutu. Oh, we're a ways away from the tutu. Still got another 170 here.
It's still towards the tutu.
Right.
So.
Shipfish, who's been a member for 8 months, says, "Everyone say they like my chat." LMAO. Oh,
Cat.
sorry, your cat. Sorry. Everyone say that I like your cat.
I like your cat. I might sneeze, though.
I might too, but actually, my allergy with cat, last time I encountered a cat, wasn't as bad as it has been in the past, so.
Mine was.
Oh, well, I'm sorry about that.
Yeah, it was pretty bad.
Plenty of food, perfect climate, we watch for diseases, and we keep all the ones the same age together. So there's no bully in the bunch. They're all the same age, growing together, so there's less fighting that way. Whereas if you have one 14-foot alligator with a bunch of 3-foot alligators, they don't have much of a chance of survival. So we keep them separated by their age group. He said, under these pretty close to ideal conditions, we can get an alligator from an egg in 1 year to 5 feet long.
That seems plausible.
He said the second year, they get up to 7 feet long.
Notice how it's shorter. The growth is decaying here.
By quite a bit.
So 0 to 5 feet, and then 5 feet to 7 feet. He said then the growth rate continues to slow down, but they never stop growing. They may grow a foot the next year, and 8 inches the next year, and 6 inches the next year, but they just simply never stop growing.
You think Kent knows what a limit is in terms of mathematics?
No.
Okay.
He'll be taught math and science for 15 years.
Because the thing is that what he's describing could very well be an asymptotic thing. So what's an asymptote? An asymptote is a limit of a function, right? So let's say you have a function that increases by half the previous increase every iteration, right? So you start with 1 foot, a 1 foot animal, right? And every year it's going to grow half again as much as it grew last year. So the first year it's not asymptotic, it's just exponential, right? It grows from a tiny little baby to a 1 foot animal. Okay, then the next year it grows to a 1.5 foot animal. Then the next year it grows to a 1 3/4 foot animal. I'm using feet, it could be meters, it doesn't matter, right? Whatever unit it is. There's a limit to how big that animal can get. You know what it is, Bent?
Mm-mm.
It's 2 feet. It will never actually reach 2 feet. Even if it lives an infinitely long time, always growing according to that rate, it approaches 2 feet asymptotically. It would take an infinite amount of time for that animal to reach 2 feet long. So just saying that animals continue to grow doesn't mean that you can say that they can get to any arbitrary size.
They don't just grow in length either. Alligators, if they're not just going to be really skinny and super long, they're going to bulk out.
It's true.
It's going to take a lot of mass to grow. And that's going to be part of the reason why they grow. They don't grow as long as quickly as they do grow.
So,
but yeah,
there's what he's describing here could very well be a convergent series that converges on a particular limit, and that means that you do not get arbitrarily sized animals out of this. Is Kent going to address this?
No,
I don't think
it's
he
the
will.
size of Texas.
Yeah, probably not. Even after an infinite amount of time, probably not.
Now, how big they get, of course, depends on numerous factors. Genetics, what species is it, what type of alligator.
Don't say. There's really only 2 species of alligator, and only one of them are used in U.S. farms. There's alligator mississippiensis, and then there's, I don't remember the actual species name. There's an alligator in China that is much smaller, does exist.
Food supply, disease, things like that. But regardless of all those things, the simple fact is they never stop growing. So if you put lizards in the pre-flood world and let them live to be 900 years old, it is known, for instance, that most reptiles live about as long as reptiles can live as long as humans.
Some of them can. Some of them typically die after 5 years. This varies wildly. I'm taking a drink.
Kind of weird thing to say.
Look, I have a leopard gecko. She's probably only got about 5 more years in her. She is not as old as most of the humans I know, right? Leopard geckos, they're not going to make 20 in most cases. You can't just say reptiles can live as long as humans and then just pretend that just means all of them. Too Young to Feel This Old upgraded membership to Sir Robson. Well, thank you very much. That is very generous of you. I really appreciate that. Thank you.
Yeah.
So yeah, just saying that because Galapagos tortoises can, get past 100, that doesn't mean that reptiles as a rule can.
The Galapagos turtles, have you seen those giant tortoises you see at the circus or at the zoos once in a while? They got these huge turtles.
I've never seen a turtle at the circus, because that sounds super boring, but I have seen giant tortoises at zoos. What would you do with this turtle at the circus?
I don't know.
What's he going to do, balance on a ball? He's going to do tricks?
No. What is he even talking about?
Okay, look, guys, we're gonna do a poll. Give me a second. I'm gonna start a poll. Have you seen a giant tortoise at the circus? Because I sure haven't, but maybe my community has, and I'm just unaware of the awesomeness of circus turtles. We're going to do a little bit more, and then we're going to take a quick break. Oh, and Dr. Tapioca Weasel gifted a membership. So take a drink. Actually, we've missed a couple drink triggers that I forgot to add, so we'll add a couple. And that was gifted to Alien Bird. Welcome to the channel memberships. Guys, send some tetrapods to welcome Alien Bird to the membership.
Turtles. they know they live over 200 years. They suspect they might live 400 years. But
I have no idea about the longevity of whatever.
Who's around to watch it? For 400 years. If reptiles lived even longer than humans, then of course the problem becomes worse. But even if they only live to be 900 years, a reptile that never stops growing for 900 years is going to get to be a big lizard.
Not necessarily. We're going to take a drink, and then we're going to go on a break after I explain again about limits. So again, infinite series can converge on a particular value that limits how much that thing can grow or decay. And because reptiles grow less as they grow older, there's every reason to think that their growth is convergent on a particular value for any given individual. So no, there's no good reason to think that reptiles could grow to be the size of like the Empire State Building just by living for a really long time. Their growth slows. So with that, guys, we are going to take a quick break. I'm going to refill this beverage, and then we're going to come back for a quick little, kind of a commercial for things like, the Patreon and whatnot. And then we're going to dive right back into this. And Bent, we've gone through 10 minutes of this already. At this pace, we are on track to start the next video.
Nice.
Before the end of the night. So, yeah. All right.
Awesome.
Guys, we will be back. All right, guys, we are back. Thank you for sticking with us, those of you who did, which again, looks like pretty much everyone. Do hit like if you are enjoying this. I am seeing about 20 people who haven't hit like, which, come on, guys, help me out here. Anyway.
I know you're on mobile. I know you're busy. I know that this is background stuff. At some point in the next hour, see if you can reach over and click like.
Yeah, it's one little tap. It doesn't cost you a dime. Not even a dime. What might cost you a dime if you chose to engage with it would be the Patreon and channel memberships. We've already gone over the channel memberships. The Patreon is very similar. It can be slightly cheaper because the lowest tier is $1 instead of $1.99. Gets you pretty much all the same benefits per tier, except it does not give you access to the channel emojis, so there is that. But you can also go annual for a 12% discount, so there is that. And both of them get you all those perks we talked about, or access to the Discord server, early access to videos, names and credits, video demands from me, or for me, I guess, for me, yeah. And you're helping the channel out. But if a monthly or annual subscription isn't the thing you want to do, there are lots of other ways in addition to liking this. Share the video around. Send it to people who you think might like it. Comment on videos. Or if you want to be a little bit more direct, there's also an Amazon wish list in the description for both me and Bent. And Dr. Tapioca Weasel just donated another membership. Take a drink. And it was Zach Brannigan. Nice. You are now a member, Zach Brannigan. Other members, send the Petrapod emoji to welcome Zach into the membership program. Guys, if you are gifted a membership, that does not auto-renew. When it expires, YouTube will ask you if you would like to renew, and all you have to do is click no, and that's it. You're done. No financial obligation. But if you enjoy being a channel member, you can renew it, and you will keep all those benefits as long as you keep paying for it. Anyway, guys, here we go. More Creation Science Evangelism 102.
After a while, dinosaurs were probably just giant reptiles that lived before the flood.
Like giant versions of what's around today?
Yep, that's what he's saying.
Big old drink. Down a whole bunch of pills, but that was crazy.
Okay, so, as you guys might be aware, I know a thing or two about dinosaurs, and dinosaurs are very distinct from modern reptiles apart from birds.
Don't say.
Yes. So, the implication here is basically that dinosaurs are literally just old big lizards. Okay, let's go through a few differences between lizards and dinosaurs. Lizards have a parietal foramen on the top of their head. Dinosaurs don't. Dinosaurs have thecodont teeth, where each tooth has a socket. Lizards have pleurodont teeth, where the teeth all grow from a single groove. Dinosaurs have erect limbs, whereas lizards have sprawling limbs. Lizards have fewer than 5 sacral vertebrae, whereas dinosaurs have more than 5 sacral vertebrae. Dinosaurs have their sacral vertebrae, especially at the transverse processes, very strongly fused to the sacral arches. Lizards do not have this. Dinosaurs have a fourth trochanter and caudofemoralis longus. Lizards do not. Dinosaurs have an antorbital fenestra and a mandibular fenestra, and in some cases even a promaxillary fenestra. Lizards lack all of these fenestrae. Dinosaurs tend to have both a superior and inferior temporal fenestra. Lizards only have the superior temporal fenestra, having lost the inferior one way back before they became lizards. Dinosaurs typically have fewer than 5 digits on the manus. Lizards almost always have 5, assuming they actually have legs, because snakes are technically lizards and they don't have 5 because they have none. I mean, it just keeps on going, right? I could add more, but I think you get the point. There's no way that lizards can grow into dinosaurs if you just let them live long enough. It's just not a thing. So, I guess I'll hit play again.
They did not live millions of years ago. They're just big lizards that lived with Adam and Eve.
He said it. He said it explicitly. They're just big lizards. I'm taking it.
That lived with Adam and Eve.
Mm-hmm.
Even today, reptiles never stop growing.
Uh-oh. Dr. Tapioca Weasel has just gifted 5 memberships. So here we go. SG Cruitt, Bob Knob, Paleo, Christopher Canaditheist, Sorry, that's a little tough. And Valkyrie Vision were all gifted memberships by Dr. Tapioca Weasel, and we drink 5 times. Here we go. 1, 2, 3, 4, and 5.
This iced tea with strawberry lemonade flavoring at it. It's pretty good.
I'm just still drinking rum and cola. Ooh. Oh, and yeah, Paleo says, thanks again, Dr. Tapioca Weasel. Paleo is, in fact, Paleologos, one of my favorite young Earth creationists, because unlike young Earth creationists like Ken Hovind, Paleo knows a thing or two about things. And we've actually streamed together on my channel, so, you know, check that out if you want. Anyway, here we go.
When we first moved in here 11 years ago, I went around and met all the neighbors. Jan, do you remember the folks down the street that had the pet shop? They raised pets to sell. Just where they tore the...
Yeah, that's what a pet shop is.
It's in a trailer down there. They've tore it down now. It's where the PCC print shop is. But I went down and knocked on the door, and the guy said, come on in. So I walked in.
I like how Ken is describing literally how you go visit someone, and we have to hear all the details. He's like, I knocked on the door, and he said, come on in, so I came on in, and then I turned the doorknob, and I opened the door, and the door opened, and then I stepped over the threshold, and I was inside. Ken, just get to the point.
Ken writing like a short story, and that's like what it is.
My goodness. It's basically, he's basically writing the Scarlet Letter, which is what my impression of the Scarlet Letter when I was a kid, reading it way back in the days of the dinosaurs. We had time travel books. Just don't worry about it.
My impression of that book was like, I'm in 5th grade and I am not going to read this book.
Right. I'm
just going to guess on the exam or whatever and not care.
Basically, I noticed that most paragraphs that started with description of the scenery ended with description of the scenery. And that was the vast majority of the paragraphs. I remember it took an entire chapter for one person to open a door. So I just started with,
oh gosh,
I'm going to start reading the first
sentence.
I didn't
read it.
I'm going to read the first sentence of each paragraph. And if nothing happens in that sentence, if it's just description, I'm going to skip to the next paragraph.
Just read the top of the sentence.
I aced the test because the test was all about the plot elements. But none of that happens in the 4-page description of the suit of armor that some guy has hanging up on his wall. Yeah. Anyway, enough talk about the Scarlet Letter. We're going to continue with Kent.
As soon as I stepped in the kitchen, right in front of me was a 5-foot-long iguana.
Okay.
Just standing there looking at me. I held real still. I said, does he bite? The guy said, no, we just fed it. I said, man, how big's it going to get? He said, oh, they never stop growing.
That doesn't answer the question. There's a maximum size for iguanas. And I hate that this is just Kent once saw a biggish lizard.
Right?
Yeah, great. Go see a Komodo dragon. It'll be even bigger. Who cares? It doesn't mean anything. It doesn't help your point.
He said, I raise them right here and sell them to pet stores.
Okay, look, you should not be selling 5-foot iguanas. Iguanas are very particular lizards. They only ever like a very small number of people. They tend to be aggressive and whip their tails at other people. They actually don't tend to bite. They tend to whip their tails, but they have very long tails, and it can be very painful. It can actually even be dangerous. Be hit by a lizard, a green iguana. If you're going to sell green iguanas, they need to be infants. The only reason for a pet shop to have a full-grown green iguana is to show people what they're getting into, right? Because some people buy adorable little tiny baby green iguanas, not knowing this is going to be an animal that needs its own entire room in your house just dedicated to this animal, and that will quite possibly break the smaller bones in people's hands if it doesn't know them well and they go into that room. Like,
yeah.
I'm not going to tell you don't get a green iguana as a pet, but like, this is a big thing you're getting into. Know what you're getting into first. So I'm very much hoping that this guy is not selling 5-foot iguanas, because that is way too old to sell to a new one. Oh, take a drink for Godzilla. Take 2 drinks for Godzilla. Okay, here we go.
I said, what's the biggest one you've ever seen? He said, oh, I've seen them 10 feet long.
I'm going to press X to doubt on that one. Let's look up iguana maximum length. Iguana max length.
Are you calling this random guy a liar?
Yeah, 6.6 feet, 2 meters. I do not believe. Okay, here's the thing, right? I think this is actually a story that didn't happen. Not entirely,
Drink
but
for
enough
that.
to drink for.
I'll drink for that.
I think Kent actually walked into a pet shop and found a big iguana, but I think the details of this are just coming from his own brain. Like, oh, it was 10 feet. Because no, it wasn't. There was no 10-foot iguana.
Iguanas. I went down 6 months later, knocked on the door. Hey, how's the iguana doing? He said, oh, we don't know. I said, you don't know? He said, no, he got out. I said, you mean like outside? He said, yeah, he's around here in the neighborhood someplace. If you see it, give me a call, would you? I said, forget it, man. I'm calling 911 if I see a 6-foot iguana crawling around the neighborhood.
That's dumb. A 6-foot iguana is not a good reason to waste resources, emergency resources. Don't. I know Kent is mostly just telling a joke that didn't land, which means we drink for it.
Yeah.
But, like, look, the existence of a 6-foot iguana is reason to maybe call animal control if you're in a place that doesn't normally have iguanas, but it's certainly not a reason to call 911. Which, by the way, is like the US equivalent of 999 if, like, you're in the UK or whatever your equivalent, like, medical emergency is in various other countries.
It's hard for Kent to remember more than 3 digits at a time. More than 1 digit at a time, really, but he can do it.
Good point.
Especially when the second and third digit are the same as one.
Space Dragon says, one of my friends owns a 2-tailed iguana. Now, that's interesting. I've never seen a 2-tailed iguana.
He never did find it. Now, he told me, he said it probably won't survive because it's been hand-fed all of its life. You know, it doesn't know how to hunt for food. Plus,
so iguanas primarily eat plants. They don't mostly hunt. But that being said, yeah, if it had been hand-fed its whole life, it still probably doesn't know how to find food naturally. So it's probably still going to starve. But I just want to point out that, yeah, a big portion of an iguana's, a green iguana, its diet is going to be plants. And actually, that's just broadly Iguana Day, right? Like desert iguanas here in Arizona that we have, they primarily eat flowers. The marine iguanas in the Galapagos mostly eat seaweed. Iguanas are not entirely vegetarian, but they're mostly vegetarian.
some dog or herd of cats or something is going to, you know, worry this thing to death.
Yes,
and he said
cats
it's probably
come in herds.
too big now to climb trees. Plus, it's
No, it's not. Look, man, alligators and crocodiles can climb trees. I promise you, a 6-foot iguana can climb a tree.
certainly too out of shape to climb trees because
That might be.
we've been raising it in the kitchen all this time. But they just never stop growing. So I think before the flood, they got to be huge.
Except
you can
that
buy
it
these.
stopped at 6 feet, so I guess technically it's still growing a little bit, but it's a 6-foot iguana.
Yeah. So what that means is like every other year that it lives, it's going to grow like, you know, a few centimeters, and then a few fewer centimeters, and a few fewer centimeters, and eventually, maybe if it lives longer than most iguanas have ever lived, maybe it could get to 7 feet. Maybe.
Today, a Jackson chameleon, you can buy these at the pet store.
Okay. This isn't a drink trigger, but I need a drink. Because this is going to get a little bit on the dark side. This isn't a prediction, because I know exactly where Kent's going. There's no question about that. Jackson's chameleons are chameleons that have 3 horns, and Kent has been fond for decades of saying that maybe Triceratops is a just very old Jackson's chameleon. Now, for all the previous reasons that I mentioned, as well as a few others, Jackson's chameleons are certainly not Triceratops. If you want to hear me go into this in depth, check out my Helping Cindy Lincoln series. There's a movie version of it, so it's super cut. I go in depth, complete with a skeletal diagram of both Triceratops and Jackson's chameleon. But here's why I need a little bit of a drink before I talked about it. A few years ago, someone sent Kent an adult Jackson's chameleon. Like a couple years later, Cindy Lincoln was filming her Science Center tour at Dinosaur Adventureland, and that Jackson's chameleon, that very one, was in formaldehyde in a mason jar in there. And that Jackson's chameleon, so a Jackson's chameleon can live about a decade or so. And I don't know for certain how old it was, but on average, you should expect a Jackson's chameleon as an adult to live more than a couple years after being gifted to a keeper, if the new keeper is competent. I am of the opinion that it is much more likely than not that Kent Hovind neglected that animal until it died. And then it was just shoved in a jar that was filled with formaldehyde and put in a science center. Guys, first, if you're going to get a lizard as a pet, look into what it takes to take care of that lizard. Lizards are not as easy to take care of as cats or dogs. They're easier in some ways, right? Like, you're not going to have to take your lizard on a walk and clean from, like, the sidewalk. You just have to clean out a cage every once in a while. But in other ways, they're harder because you have to do things like carefully control its diet, because you can't just go and buy a giant sack of dried food for it. You're going to have to control things like how much light is it getting, how much vitamin D is it getting, like what moisture level is in there for most lizards. It is not a simple thing to take care of a chameleon. If you get one, make sure you've looked up care sheets. Make sure you have the right kind of light bulb. Make sure you have the right kind of like misting bottle to keep the humidity right. Have humidity monitors, things like this. Because I don't like to hear about lizards being accepted as pets and then being neglected to death. I say that as someone who recently had a long-time pet lizard die. It was a little rough. You guys probably know about it. I didn't keep it a secret. But, like, don't be like Kent. Take care of your pet lizards if you get one. They're not something you can just toss in a cage, toss a couple bugs to it. With some exceptions. There are some very easy to care for lizards. But, like, yeah. Jackson chameleon is not one of them.
Door. They have 3 horns on their face.
Yes, they do.
Now, something like that at 15 tons.
You will never get to, Kent. No Jackson's chameleon will get to 15 tons. For one thing, Jackson's chameleons only have effectively 2 toes. They actually have a normal number of toes, but they're in like 2 little clubby groups that are designed to catch onto branches. What branch is going to hold a 15-ton chameleon? Also, if you think they're a Triceratops, hey, you know what Triceratops had? A beak. You know what Jackson's chameleons don't have? Beaks, Kent. How old do you have to get to before you grow a beak? Take another drink. I just can't with it.
It's a little bit absurd.
Just a bit.
Would probably resemble what we have as the Triceratops.
Yeah, sure, Kent. The only thing that Triceratops has that's notable is his 3 horns. I mean, never mind the weird feet. Never mind the beak. That's all just made up. That's just Satan planted Triceratops beaks to trick you into thinking it's not a Jackson's chameleon.
Man and dinosaurs lived at the same time.
Even if it were the case that the Jackson's chameleon were just a small Triceratops, that does not lead you to dinosaurs and man lived at the same time. I'm taking another drink. I'm gonna have to get a 3rd drink for the first time in like a year and a half or more.
Yikes.
Goodness.
Wow.
This one is just getting really bad.
The Bible says God made everything in 6 days, so he made dinosaurs at the same time. Human and dinosaur bones have been found together.
Oh, have they? That's a whole big old citation needed from me there, Kent. Yeah, I don't believe you.
Proving they live together. Human and dinosaurs are found together on artwork.
Okay, we're just going to skip over that. No actual citation.
I've seen some crazy artwork that does not represent things that are real.
I mean, that's true. Artwork on its own is not enough to say that a thing is real. People draw things that don't exist. And, like, okay, like, that doesn't help. Now, do you mean, like, ancient artwork? Because that might be interesting.
Before imagination had been invented yet, I guess? Like, what? Come on, man. They didn't have YouTube. They were creative.
Right?
They had to draw.
Like, at this point, we're at the point where, like, I don't even know, like, dinosaur erotic novels, like, Taken by the T-Rex, are just now evidence for Kent Hovind. Which, by the way, that's a real thing by Christy Sims. Christy Sims is probably a pen name, but that person writes a bunch of dinosaur erotica novels. As far as Kent is concerned, that's evidence of humans and dinosaurs having sex together.
What if that ends up being like Eric Hovind who's writing that?
That would be hilarious.
It probably isn't, but yeah.
In Peru, they find humans
Oh God,
and dinosaurs
it's Ica stones.
together on what are
Ica stones. This prediction.
called the Ica stone.
Oh my goodness.
Nailed it. Good job. Good work.
Dr. Baugh has a couple of the stones. Don Patton has some in Texas.
Yes, Dr. Baugh, who, by the way, is his doctor in the same way Kent is.
So not a doctor.
Yeah, not a doctor at all. In fact, he's actually less of a doctor than Kent is, because Kent actually has a Oh! Take a drink. So, Kent Hovind has a doctorate from a thing that purports to be a school. Dr. Baugh's quote-unquote doctorate is from nothing.
Okay.
He just made it up.
Okay.
As far as anyone can tell. Okay, so let's talk about the Ica stones. So the Ica stones are from Peru, as Kent said correctly, although we didn't drink for it because it's fairly minor. But there are some real artifacts that are stones from this area that are carved by, or were carved hundreds of years ago by natives in the area. But those things have this cool thing called provenance, where the archaeologists who found them actually recorded where they were found and, did their due diligence on making sure everyone knows and that they're on the up and up. The ones with things like brain surgery, telescopes, astronauts, and dinosaurs, Kent doesn't like to talk about the astronaut one. They don't have provenance. And a farmer admitted to carving them and also then went on to carve new ones on camera for a TV crew to show how he'd done it. The Ica stones Kent is talking about are just fake. They're literal hoaxes. The thing that Kent likes to make fun of people for believing in when he talks about things like Piltdown Man.
I feel like he knows better.
Oh, he probably does. This is Kent just being like, oh yeah, Piltdown Man. No, you should totally believe that as long as it confirms your biases. But when other people do it, no, then it's not okay. So yeah, sure, Kent. The Ica stones.
Both friends of mine. Dr. DeCara in south of Lima, Peru, collects these stones. He has a museum of them. He has 11,000 of them in his museum.
Imagine how much money that is to a poor Peruvian farmer who now all he has to do to make that money is etch silly little cartoon dinosaurs into stone and then bake them in cow dung for a little while, which is literally what he does. Like, you could eke out a meager subsistence living by farming the land, or you could sell some dumbass gringo a bunch of fake stones that, well, it'd be the real stones, but a bunch of fake carvings. I guess they're real carvings, but a bunch of fake artifacts, because they're not real artifacts. Yeah. There you go. That you just carved one day, and then you baked in your cow's crap. Like, that's such a great gig, comparatively.
Right.
Okay.
About 50,000 have been found.
That's way more than has actually been found, but okay.
They're called the Ica stones. Now let me tell you the story about the Ica stones and show you what the propaganda, the
propaganda. The guy who said, yeah, no, I faked these, that's just propaganda, guys. The fact that they don't have provenance and that the dinosaurs more resemble 1950 cartoons than they do actual dinosaurs, don't worry about that.
This is like a paper pushing anti-vax that is like redacted, and even the author's like, yeah, I made that up. Mm-hmm. It's kind of like that.
Yeah.
That's what we're going to say about this. These stones were apparently first really discovered by the Spanish conquistadors back in 1570 when they.
It's conquistador, Kent. The QU thing has been abandoned in Spanish for hundreds of years. Conquistador. I know it's minor, but like, holy crap, man! No one says conquistador.
Conquistador.
Kent, you live in Florida. Learn a little bit of damn Spanish. Like, not a lot, just a little bit. Just a tiny bit.
Well, he can speak it pretty well, I guess.
Well, to be fair,
he says a lot of dumb things, so maybe he can't.
To be fair, in his tax case, when the judge asked him, Mr. Hoven, do you speak English? His response was, to some degree.
Right.
And that was in response to him doing the same thing we saw with the Darrell Brooks trial, where it was like, I don't understand what's happening. Because they both try the same thing, where I don't understand what I'm being charged with, I don't understand what's happening, I don't understand these proceedings. You know how much it helped either of them?
Not at all.
Exactly.
In Kent's case, it's true. He didn't understand it.
Well, that might actually be the case, yeah.
He also structured pretty efficiently for someone who didn't understand what he was doing, so I don't know.
Yeah.
Came through this area, they found these stones with strange animals. Now, the Spanish didn't know what they were.
This is all just made up.
Turns out there's dinosaurs carved on these rocks. And the Spanish found them, over 400 years ago.
Yeah, that's going to be another one of those big old citation needed, Kent. And are we going to get one? No.
And reported them, but didn't know what they were.
And they took them back to Europe, where they're now housed in a museum? Oh, no, of course not. Despite the fact that the Spanish were in the business of basically stealing anything they could get their little grubby paws on in Peru and all across South America, except I guess in Brazil where it was the Portuguese doing it. Whatever. None of these made their way back at the time to any museums or anything. No one seems to have any of these things that the Spanish found, despite the fact that, like I said, they were taking everything back, including people. Like, just kidnapping people to bring back, to show off. Like, hey, look, I've got a native of this region of the New World. Look at that. That's a guy. They were taking people back. No one took one of these stones back to put in a museum back in Spain.
Fake. Yeah. They knew better.
Can you guys tell that this one is very difficult for me to be getting through right now?
Yeah.
But let's finish up on these Ica stones here.
Yes, please.
When they were first discovered, the Spanish didn't know what they were. They just said, we found some strange animals carved on rocks. We've never seen these animals before. So they didn't, know what to say about them. Then, in 1961, people began finding more of these things and collecting them.
No, that's when people actually began finding them. And by people, I mean one farmer said he found them in a cave whose location he wouldn't give. That's what he means by people. Taking a drink for people started finding them. No, a guy started finding them, and he found one idiot to buy them.
This is just kind of a local phenomena in Peru. Now, you have to understand, Peru has a lot of ancient history. The Inca, not Ica, Inca Indians, and some of these other Indian tribes down there, have a lot of pottery and stuff. And if you're caught selling what's called the Peruvian...
It's true, they're not from India. But Kent is still on the, we're going to call Native Americans Indian.
Look, you have Americans and then Indians. That's the rest of the world, I guess. I don't know what he's thinking.
National treasure without a permit. In other words, you got to pay the government, so they get their cut out of it. You go to jail. A Peruvian jail sentence is the equivalent to an American death sentence.
Maybe, I don't know. Guys, if you have experience with Peruvian jails, let me know.
You go to jail, you last about 2 years down there. Just horrible conditions. So, one farmer who's been finding these stones on his property and selling them to Dr. DeCara, for instance, or other people,
No, he's... Okay, look. By finding them on his property, you mean making them. He claims to have been finding them in some cave whose location, again, is a secret. That's the thing. It's a secret. No, we can't tell anyone where the cave is, because then they go, might go check.
Understand.
Right.
It's a secret.
And then B says, let me guess, the air in Peru is tinted a funny color. Yes, it's tinted yellowish. Like all of Latin America. The air is just yellowish. If you're watching U.S. cinema.
Souvenir hunters, wow, look at this rock with dinosaurs and humans on there. He's been selling these things. He's finding them. He doesn't tell people where he finds them because, of course, they're going to go steal them,
Yeah, they're going to go steal all of the real artifacts.
By him not telling people where they're found, it means that they don't have this thing called provenance, right? which is a big thing in archaeology. You have to know where things are from, because then if you don't, you can't make any conclusions about them.
You're just saying that because you want to steal all of his artifacts.
Plus, it wouldn't be
making from his
stealing.
basement.
It would be finding. And if you're following the laws in Peru, you would be turning them over to the Peruvian government as part of your archaeological expedition.
I don't think this is a group of people that like following laws very well. This is Kent Hovind we're talking about.
I know. Good point.
And the fraud, whatever his name is, who made these Ica-stones.
So Kent Hovind's story is, some guy is finding stones. He won't tell people where because you might steal them. But he's found thousands of them, and he's been selling them. And he also said that he was faking them, and showed how he faked them on camera, but they're still real. Trust me, guys.
They're still real.
That's the story
He
Kent is
wouldn't
going.
lie, despite him admitting to have lied and proven it. Ignore that.
I can't get over that that's the story Kent is saying. Yeah,
How stupid
that's totally
that is.
believable.
That's really
Yeah, well,
bad.
that's fair.
I'm convinced.
Oh my goodness.
Out of this grave. But he was put on TV in front of the camera, and they were interviewing him. Some media thing was saying, you know, tell us about these stones you have with dinosaurs and humans on there. Right behind the camera were two Peruvian police officers.
That's going to be a whole another citation needed for me.
Waiting for him to say, I'm finding them and selling them, so they could arrest him. So instead, the farmer stood on camera and said, oh, I make these stones and sell them. It's a hobby of mine.
And then he demonstrated it, right? He didn't just say it. I've seen the interview. He went and carved one, Kent. Like, he showed you how he carved it and how he showed how he used comic books as references and how he baked it in cow dung to make it look older. Like, he did the whole process on camera to produce a brand new Ica stone.
And it looked like all the rest of them.
Yes, of course it did.
Identical, right? Yeah. He's gotten really good at reproducing this thing he found.
Oh my goodness, this is so bad.
Yeah.
So they said, would you please make some for us right here? And so he carved one, and it was a horrible, like a child's picture compared to...
No, it wasn't. They're all like child's pictures, Kent. Look at the ones you have in your quote-unquote museum. They look like a 5-year-old's drawings of dinosaurs, Kent. Come on. Of course it looked like a child made it, because they all do. Take another drink. Just... Oh my goodness.
Real artwork, you know, and nothing at all similar to these stones he's, you know, selling.
Yeah, nothing at all, just identical. But besides that...
Vadim asks if he was using dentist gear to do the carving. I don't remember. You might be remembering correctly. I honestly can't remember exactly what tool. I just remember watching the interview and watching him carve them, and I don't remember exactly what the tools were. So, sorry about that.
Also, they analyzed these stones and found out they have an oxidized coating.
Yeah. He was baking them in cow dung. You know what happens when you bake things in fire? They oxidize, because that's what fire is. It's an oxidation result or event or process reaction. I don't care what dough you use. So yeah, when you bake things in cow dung, they get a coating that's been oxidized, because that's what frickin' fire is. I'm doing it again. I'm taking another drink. I just cannot with Kent. Just having literally everything you could possibly need to show that this is nonsense, and just like, of course it's real.
Most materials, over time, they oxidize, they react to the oxygen in the air, and they develop...
Yeah, especially if you set them on fire.
...a coating on it. Your car does the same thing, you know, the paint starts to lose its shine as it...
That's sun bleaching, not oxidation, Kent. You're thinking of rust.
...gets an oxidized coating, and use rubbing compound to get that off and shine it back up. Well, these stones have an oxidized coating that would take a minimum of 200 years to develop that much oxidation.
Yeah, on their own, but you could also bake them in dung.
Oops.
So nobody's making these in the last...
Bake these stones, it takes more than one step. That's why Kent thinks they're real.
Right.
One step is the only thing he can think it.
Yeah, he's just passing over the part where the guy actually gave them a false patina by baking them in cow dung. Let's just ignore that part.
100 years. Now, why would anybody make 50,000 stones? Don't they have something else to do with their time than sit around and carve dinosaurs
I
and
don't know.
humans
If
together?
they're selling a bunch and making a bunch of money, why would they
Right?
do that? Who likes money? Not me.
Certainly
Now
not
send
poor
me
Peruvian
money.
subsistence farmers. This is... Who would sit around and do this? I don't know. A forger who's getting paid what for him is a handsome sum for each one.
Ridiculous.
Oh my god, I can't. I'm gonna hit play.
The other interesting thing about these stones, we'll get into more of that later, is
good.
the dinosaurs that are on there have circles on the side.
Circles on the side.
Yep, most of them have circles.
You
Inside
draw
the figure.
circles where like the joints are, like in the elbow,
Nope,
in the
they're
shoulder.
just like sort of like just on the
Okay.
skin.
Oh.
Nobody has ever seen dinosaur skin.
I see dinosaur skin all the time. I ate some dinosaur skin recently, but sure, why not?
Because when you find a dinosaur in the ground, you find the bones. Okay, the rest is rotted away.
Not always. We do, in fact, have skin impressions and even fossilized skin in the form of various, like, really fine deposits, as famously was seen with Psittacosaurus in a find from, I think, about 20 years ago, which also had the only known preserved dinosaur butthole. So now there's a paper about the Psittacosaurus butthole.
Nice.
It
I
was-
want to read that paper.
It was Y-shaped.
Spoiler alert.
So nobody knew for sure what dinosaur skin looked like.
I'm pretty sure what it looks like now. And
Yeah.
there's a lot of feathers covering it.
So, to be fair, a lot of dinosaurs actually had reticulate scales covering them. But what I'm pretty sure Kent is going to go with is that we have ceratopsian skin impressions that show feature scales that are sort of like hexagonal in shape and that are surrounded by reticulate scales. And he's going to say that these feature scales are quote-unquote circular and that how could anyone have known that? And then he's going to pretend that the fact that most of the dinosaurs on the Ica stones have these is evidence that they're actually drawn from life. Even though we also have skin impressions from some of the other animals depicted on the Ica stones, and they don't have these feature scales that ceratopsians had. So, yeah.
The
telling
idea
you.
that art must have been of literal creatures and not imaginative at all because hundreds of years ago imagination didn't exist in art is so absurd to me that I want to, I don't know what I want to do. I want to do something, darn it.
Yeah. Is it take a drink?
I'll take another drink for how absurd it is. It's
Sure.
a good idea.
1992 or 3, I believe, somebody in Bolivia found fossilized dinosaur skin.
I have no idea what he's talking about with Bolivia and all this nonsense. But take a couple drinks for Godzilla. Okay.
And guess what? There were Rosetta patterns, circles. The scales were arranged in like nodules on the side. They actually had circles on them.
Yeah, that's Triceratops, and it definitely wasn't Bolivia, because Triceratops isn't from Bolivia. It's from, like, the Midwest USA.
I feel like
There's
you
no
made
way
a
they
prediction that came true.
Oh, yeah, I did. We'll
Yeah.
take a drink for that. Yeah, we're more than twice as far into drinks as we were last week, so...
Wow.
Yeah. Oh, my goodness. I'm actually going to have
The
to
way
get...
it goes sometimes.
I'm going to have to refresh this drink before we're done. I'm already down to, like, the drinks.
Oh, what about second drink?
I mean, my ice is already almost melted.
There's too many drink triggers. Second drinks, that's not going to work.
could have known that when they made these stones, because the skin was just discovered in the last 10 years. Carl.
Yeah, but Kent, he didn't... Okay, look. You got a guy who's carving a bunch of not stick figure, but like very vague looking dinosaurs on stones. He wants to gussy up the stone. What do you put in the middle of a dinosaur silhouette, basically, to dress it up a bit?
A circle.
A circle is a fine option. It's easy to carve and like whatever. Now it has some visual interest. And then, oh, but ceratopsians had large feature scales. Yeah.
True.
Okay. That doesn't connect back at all. That's just a different thing that also is true.
Law has the piece of dinosaur skin in his museum in Texas, the one that was found.
Alien Bird says that they found an X-rated Icostone. Yeah, I'm not super surprised. But hey, you know what? There's a whole lot of X-rated art out there from the actual past, especially from the Greeks and the Indians. There's a lot of X-rated Indian art. Anyway.
Well, everyone's Indian if they're not from America, right?
Or even if you are, depending.
Yeah, I guess.
The missionary, I met the wife of the missionary, or the best friend of the missionary or something, who found it down in, I believe it was Bolivia or Peru. Bolivia, I'm pretty sure. Anyway, we'll get into more of that later.
She's still talking about the dinosaur
so
skin?
that's about the dinosaurs and humans living together. Next class, we'll talk about dinosaur and human footprints. I've read all the controversy.
He says that, but the actual next topic is apparently insects, according to the video I found. So,
nice.
For and against this, and we're going to explain the whole thing about the truth, what I consider to be the truth about the dinosaur and human footprints in our next class.
Considers to be the truth, so not the actual truth.
All right, guys, that is the end of this video. So here's what's going to happen. I am going to queue up the next video, refresh this drink real quick, and then we're going to get into at least the first bits of the next video. And we're going to do a quick intermission scene while I do that, because I'm not quite ready to let this episode go. It's still a little bit early for that.
Yeah.
So stick with us, because we will be back. All right, everybody, I am back. We don't have a whole lot of time for this episode, or this episode of Kent, I guess. This episode is almost done, but whatever. You know what I mean.
Yeah, we know.
All right. Bent, you have confirmed that you can see and hear.
I have confirmed. I can see. I can hear.
Okay, here we go.
Why does it say Dr. Kenthoven accidentally on that?
Yeah, that's a good question. And this actually even says on his thing, Class 2. So, I don't know why he was saying we was going to talk about footprints next.
Yeah.
All right, let's begin. This will be class number 2 of Creation Science 102. We're continuing where we left off. Last week we talked a little bit about the giant insects that are found. Who remembers a little bit from last week about the...
I've been now disconnected from
what's a problem?
Wait, what?
Into Discord.
Can't see it anymore?
It went away.
Okay.
It's just stop streaming it.
Whatever. Other submit guy. Done.
Oh, good.
Try again.
All right. All right. Good.
All right. I remember, Kent, last time when you said that we were going to be talking about dinosaur footprints and human footprints, but apparently we're talking about bugs.
Insects.
I wish Bree were here. Someone go find brain bug, or wait, hive science. That's
Problem that with giant insects today, what would be a problem why they couldn't survive? Yes, sir.
Not enough atmospheric pressure.
Not enough pressure. What does the pressure have to do with the size of an insect?
They breathe through their skin.
They breathe through their...
Once again, as we covered last time, it's not the actual absolute pressure, it's the partial pressure of oxygen, Kent, which can be increased without increasing overall atmospheric pressure if you hold pressure the same, but increase the amount of oxygen as a proportion of the atmosphere. Also, I ended my poll about turtles. 93% of you said that no, you had not seen a giant tortoise at a circus. 6% of you said yes. I suspect that that means that 6% of my audience are dishonest. That was with 83 votes.
skin, right, and they just don't have enough skin compared to the size, the volume of their body. Okay.
Do
Again-
insects have any skin at all whatsoever?
It depends on how you define skin, basically. They certainly don't have skin like
They
you
don't,
do.
by the way I define skin, but
Yeah.
they might, by the way, some might, I guess.
So
That's
also, we're going to take a drink for having addressed this so many times. They don't just breathe through their surface area. They have spiracles, which are actual holes in the abdomen that lead to gas exchange chambers. Now, traditionally, it's been thought that insects were basically passive in terms of breathing with their spiracles, but it actually has been found that some of them do actually have some limited active respiration with the spiracles. Now, is it the case that spiracles are less efficient than lungs, and therefore, insects do have maximum sizes they can reasonably reach given a particular amount of partial pressure of oxygen? Yes. But it's still not true to just say, insects breathe through their skin. You know what it is true for? Most amphibians, who even among the ones who have lungs, still have a significant amount of their oxygen exchange, gas exchange overall, happen on their actual skin. So maybe Ken should be talking... Yeah. Maybe Ken should be talking about newts, many of whom don't even have lungs, because they're so small that their skin can just take care of it for them.
Now we're going to talk about what happened in Glen Rose, Texas. If you go to Dallas and head over to Fort Worth and drop west, about 45 miles, you'll see the
Why
town
is
of
he
Glen
giving me
Rose.
directions to get to Glen Rose, Texas? I don't need directions,
Who
man. It's just a
knows?
city or town or village or whatever.
Hive Science
Hive
has been
Science is cool.
summoned. I literally just mentioned her, and now look, Bree's here in the chat. Awesome.
Yeah, I'm disconnecting from your stream again.
Again? You want to hang up and call again?
Okay.
We're gonna see what happens, guys. Discourse has been pretty good. Can you connect?
Okay, I'm back in.
Kent?
Yeah, I'm back in.
All right.
I see Kent.
Texas. It's yellow there on the map. Glen Rose, small town, about 2,000 or 3,000 people, I believe. The river that runs right through town is called the Paluxy River. Now, the
True. We'll take a drink. Whatever. Who cares?
I don't.
Paluxy is the second to the fastest moving river in Texas.
I have no idea if that's true.
That's going to be on the quiz next week.
They gauge rivers by how far they drop per mile. If it runs 1 mile, how far does it drop? The Mississippi, for instance, in 1 mile drops 8 inches. 8 inches of drop for a mile of river. The Paluxy drops 17 feet per mile. So it's, I don't know
I have no idea if this is true, and I don't care enough to check.
what the fastest one is, but it's the second to the fastest moving river in Texas. The problem with this type of river is when you get a lot of rain in a hurry, you get flash floods. These kind of rivers flood easily, and the Paluxy floods very easily.
That can
and they're
happen anywhere.
True.
That can happen where rivers aren't there.
working on projects about putting dams every so often to prevent this flash flooding. But in 1908, there was a flash flood in Paluxy. They said the water was 27 feet above flood stage. and it went roaring through the area and just destroyed the bottom of the river. Now, I've been to the Paluxy. You've not been there yet, have you, Eric? You need to go there sometime. Been there 3 times. The whole area is layers of limestone, which is a rock a little softer than concrete, but, you know, roughly similar to concrete.
Here's a fun thing. Limestone reaches its maximum deposition rate under warm, calm oceans. The exact opposite of a flood. So extensive limestone deposition is basically preclusion of flood sedimentation. So,
Oops.
yeah, this is not flood sediment at all.
Oops.
Thick layers of limestone all over this area. And the Paluxy River bed is on top of one of these layers of limestone. So the river is basically flat all the way across. Most rivers, as you walk in, it gets deeper and deeper and deeper, and then more shallow and more shallow. Oh, not the Paluxy. You jump in, and if it's 2 feet deep, it'll be 2 feet all the way across. That's the way the river is. Okay. Well, nice.
Yeah, Too Young to Feel This Old says, what happened to the insects? We're going back to dinosaur tracks, which, to be fair, is what Kent said this would be about. Even though he also then started out with insects and then changed back to footprints, and who knows? Kent isn't
You never know.
great at organization.
1908, this river flooded, and the water went roaring through there 27 feet above flood stage.
Yeah, Lorraine Drosophila says, doesn't limestone also depend on a very specific stable pH? Yeah, it has to have a particular pH. I don't remember to reach maximum deposition. Basically, limestone has very particular deposition, and if they're upset, it drastically reduces the rate at which limestone deposits. Which means under best case scenarios, things like the Red Wall limestone in the Grand Canyon would take thousands of years. Not like, you know, a year. Now, you can come back and say, but sedimentation of experiments have shown that, you know, given floccule, germs to start flocculation, limestone could accumulate faster. To which I say, okay, find me the limestone in the real world with floccules, and then we'll talk. So far, hasn't happened.
And ripped off a layer of limestone, about 2 feet thick. This layer of limestone that was pulled off. Layer of limestone that was pulled off on the bottom.
Was there a streaker running through the room? Like what?
That was Kent's first mini stroke.
Oh.
There you go.
Yeah, maybe.
Because in case you guys don't know, Kent's been having mini strokes on camera. So, yeah. I actually don't recommend you go find those, because even though Kent is the worst person that I've encountered, look, he's the worst person I've ever talked to. I'll say that. I can think of worse people, but I haven't talked to any. Even then, watching someone have a stroke on camera is not a fun time.
I haven't watched it. I don't plan on it.
Yeah.
Exposed another layer underneath. You can see there the people standing next to the exposed layer, just about a 2-foot drop in limestone there. The layer underneath contained thousands of dinosaur footprints.
Hey, you know what's fun about floods? They erase footprints. So not only could the layer above not have been a flood layer, this layer couldn't be either. So I'm just going to take a drink for Kent talking about flood geology with 2 different layers of rocks that couldn't have been laid down by a flood.
Kent is failing this quiz.
Oh, yeah.
There were so many footprints there, they decided years later to make it a state park. But at first, in 1908, the local people, you know, it was kind of an oddity. Hey, come see the footprints here. And, you know, nobody knew much about it. They didn't care much about it. Outsiders in the rest of the world didn't know. In the early 30s, during the Depression, one of the work projects here in America to keep people working, to give them a job, they sent some people there to Paluxy River to chisel out large blocks of these footprints. The American Museum sent a group down there, headed by a guy named Roland T. Bird. Roland Bird was in charge of the project. They would sandbag the river, pump out the water, because it's generally, you know, only a foot deep or so. It's not a lot of water normally, except during rainy season. But if you go there in the summer, oftentimes it dries up completely. There's no water at all.
That's true. We'll take a drink. The Paluxy River actually has currently dried up because of a local drought.
And it's the second fastest moving river in Texas.
Allegedly.
So don't forget that for next week for the quiz.
But they sandbagged it, pumped the water out, found some sections of dinosaur tracks, and sawed them out. Now, they broke them up into hundreds and hundreds of pieces and numbered all the pieces, loaded these chunks onto a truck, took them to museums, and reassembled the pieces like a giant jigsaw puzzle.
That doesn't sound like the normal process for this kind of thing, but like whatever, it doesn't really matter. I don't know what the point is.
Took a long time to do this. Here's the guys, you can see them right behind this section of tracks.
I mean, look, we all know he's getting to the alleged human tracks in Paluxy. Like, I don't know why he's going on this long roundabout route.
They're about to chisel out. They reconstructed the tracks, fixed all the seams that they had made, and put them in museums. Quite a few museums around America have sections of tracks, or at least a few tracks from the Paluxy River.
Well, there is a Godzilla, and we're going to take a drink for that. And then we're going to just start wrapping it up, because you know what? I am tired of Kent's rambling about Paluxy. And he's basically said nothing important. So when we pick back up next week, we'll actually, hopefully, get to the point. Guys, thank you so much for coming here, watching. I even apparently now have the power to summon Bree from the ether of the internet.
I did it. I summoned Bree.
Oh, okay. You have the power to summon. Yep. Who, by the way, did confirm that you can actually see certain insects actively respiring with their spiracles, like in real life, like without a microscope. So spiracles are not just passive respiratory organs. Bent, do you have anything you want to plug?
Yeah, I have a link in the description with a bunch of music, and there's like quite a bit up there now. So old Copper Magma stuff, the song I've been working on, Reverse Birth, is really coming together. Go download it. They're WAV files. They're big. Download, listen to it. Also, I have an Amazon wish list. There's food on it. I am hungry. Send me food.
By the way, if the WAV files are too big to download, you can listen to them as previews on Google Drive.
If you say so.
I know so, because I've done it.
Well, there you go.
All right. Let's take a look. Oh! Drink for Godzilla again. All right, let's take a look at what's coming up. So, on Thursday, I have at noon Mountain Standard, which is 11 a.m. Pacific, 2 p.m. Eastern, the next episode of the Robert Carter series. It's a 4-part series. This is, I believe, episode. Then on the 3rd, I do have something planned, I'm planning on doing something. I don't actually have it planned out yet. However, tomorrow on Top Hats Off, if you're interested, we're going to be streaming the next episode of my Power Rangers Jungle Beasts series. We will be having our second episode with Beethoven as our Green Ranger. It'll be a little bit of a low-key episode because we're not going to have at least one of our Rangers. We might not end up having 2 of them, but that's okay because it'll be fun. Also, Too Young to Feel As Old for $2 says thank you. Well, thank you. That's going to be tomorrow. Then on the 6th, and then the next Tuesday after that, we're going to have the 98th and 99th episode, Kent with Bent. Chances are the first Tuesday in the new year will be the 100th episode. So stick around for that. That's going to be fun. Also,
it's going to be special. Yeah.
Splinter Kid has joined the channel membership at Tetrapod. Thank you very much, guys. Send Tetrapod emojis. All right. With that, though, we're going to wrap it up. I hope everyone has a wonderful rest of the night, a wonderful week. And hey, I hope I see you on Thursday for the next video. Bye.
Bye.
Thanks for watching, but before you go, I just want to say a special thank you to my channel members and my patrons, especially those pledging $20 or above. Bob Knob, Work in Progress, Beethoven, Tapioca Weasel, Denny5252, Ian Chen, Landon Knoll, Mabdy Babdy, McSpooks, Sphincter of Doom, The Venerable Bede, and Atheist Animal. As you probably know, YouTube is a very volatile platform, and from month to month my income on the channel can swing wildly. But the people you see on screen are directly supporting so that I don't have to worry too much about that, and the channel can keep going as it is, and perhaps even improving. If you'd like to join this team, there are links below to join the channel or in the description to join the Patreon. The Patreon starts as low as $1 a month, and the channel memberships start as low as $1.99 a month. On Patreon, you can even get a discount for pledging annually. If you do decide to pledge, you'll get access to an exclusive Discord server just for channel supporters, as well as early access to all of my pre-recorded videos, often up to 2 months in advance. Higher tiers will unlock even better perks. Now, if the annual or monthly pledge isn't right for you, but you still want to support the channel, there is a merch store down in the description, as well as an Amazon wishlist, just for me. And if financial support isn't something you can or want to do, then if you still want to help out the channel, please just like and share these videos and make sure you comment on them. It really helps the channel out. Thanks again for watching.